former head of Y Combinator, Sam Altman, is involved in a new project called WorldCoin, which is frankly bizarre. And the reason I mentioned the wrong WorldCoin, because there's a WorldCoin that has existed since 2013 that is a pretty basic clone coin as far as I can tell, and it has been pumping because this other WorldCoin is on the news. It doesn't exist yet. But the Altman WorldCoin, which to be clear, he's not in charge of, he has a different CEO, but he's one of the backers. His idea is to create a crypto network where everybody has a unique personal and specific identity connected to themselves individually. The way they're going to do this is they have a basketball-sized, currently in its current form, basketball-sized scanner that will take your retina print and generate what sounds like a hash from that and use that to verify your identity on the network. Now, the justification for this is that they need everybody to have just one account so that they can distribute funds. Altman basically says the idea came from his desire to do something akin to a UBI. And there are some obvious problems with this from a privacy perspective. But I think, Naomi, I'm most interested to hear what you have to say, particularly, well, you know, one thing that bugs me is this, something about just having anything on a blockchain linked to your real identity in such a specific way bugs me. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on this eyeball scanning technology.
Yeah, I mean, it would depend how they're doing it, right? Because there are lots of platforms out there that do take maybe a phone number or an email address or some personal information, but they don't store it. They just create a hash of it. Sort of, you know, now that we have zero knowledge proofs, there's so much you can do with this data without actually having to keep the data. You just need to have a proof that says, yes, I had the data. So I'm not that concerned if they're doing it that way. If they're maybe scanning these things, they're saying, okay, you haven't had an account before, they're hashing it and they get rid of the biometric data, but they actually have that proof on chain. I think that sounds kind of interesting, and it's a smart way to make sure that this system isn't taken advantage of.
And that does seem to be what they're doing, by the way.
Oh, it does? Yeah, I mean, I agree that at first sight it seems kind of dystopian, like they're collecting eyeball scans, like it's so creepy. And then you have that picture of Sam Altman on the top, like, Jen, I know that picture scared you. It's like, you know, but I think that it's probably, I mean, we're going to have to rely on this stuff more and more because biometrics really are identifiable data points. And I think the conversation just needs to make sure that it's heading the direction of, well, how do we protect this? Because it's absolutely right that you do not want a database filled with this stuff. This would be an absolute nightmare. But if you were just using this and it wasn't identifiable to you, there was just, you know, kind of some sort of zero knowledge proof that is on the blockchain and you're not storing that data, it sounds kind of interesting. But David, maybe you could explain a little bit more about what the purpose of WorldCoin is, because, you know, people are talking about like how slow relief check distribution was, and what if we had this on a global scale that doesn't involve government systems? So what are they trying to do with this?
Well, I'm going to put a pin in that. I saw Will's hand go up. Did you have something to throw in? Right.
Yeah, I think Jen as well. I just want to note that I love how we measure everything by basketballs in this story, at least, which is just like the oddest measurement. It's like Americans will measure anything but by measurements. So it's like turkeys or washing machines, and now it's basketball. Makes no sense at all. Jen, your thought?
Well, that actually set my thought up perfectly, because that basketball device is what I am most concerned about in this story. It costs $5,000. This is the device in which they want to scan eyeballs with to provide universal basic income. And David, you wrote this story so well. You just really, your whole persona came out in it, and I loved it so much. I just imagined this device being taken off to rural areas in Africa to kind of scan eyeballs and get relief to underserved areas. And it didn't really make sense to me. It feels even more complicated than what we have today. And so how are we actually addressing the problem? I don't know if you have any thoughts there, or Zach, I don't know if you have any thoughts. I saw your hand go up.
I was going to say, send the orb to El Salvador. Sam Altman got to call up Nayib Bukele, because I don't know what El Salvador's doing, but this is definitely a situation in which this would maybe make sense. But I will pass the basketball back to David for his take.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point, and I think something that, you know, I don't consider myself a Bitcoin maximalist, but this is definitely, at least as it's being framed right now, if you're a Bitcoiner, you're going to look at this very seriously askance, because he is talking about this identity verification, but also creating a totally new payments platform and network and currency to go with this identity verification thing. And so you can question whether those two actually go together. Like, what if we could do an eyeball hash to make sure you have a unique Bitcoin address and somehow verify that? But Naomi, just to quickly your question, yeah, one of the things that I've written about before is the relief payments to the U.S. I'm sure I'm an outlier. I still have not cashed any of my pandemic relief checks for various reasons, having to do mostly with logistics. And so, you know, the speed of getting relief payments or support payments to people really matters. So that's the argument here, is that if you're trying to distribute funds, something like this would be very fast, and that would have some real economic impacts. But Naomi, you maybe wanted to talk about Bitcoin.
Yeah, just as a closing thought, as we summarize, I do really like Sam Altman. I think he's pretty cool and has some really cool ideas. So I'm not writing this off. I think that it's definitely interesting and something I'm excited to see the direction it goes in. Obviously, I agree with you, David, about like this kind of global verification system. Like it has the potential to head into murky territory, but I hope that under the guidance of Sam Altman, it doesn't go in that direction.
Yeah, sounds a bit like a global. Sounds a bit like a global stablecoin, akin almost to Libra or CBDC without a CB in it.